Nothing quite beats that 90s aesthetic. The grainy textures had a certain charm that modern anime just can't seem to replicate. So it's no wonder so many schmucks such as myself still search for some hidden gems from yesteryear. Now, you don't need me to tell you to watch something like Neon Genesis Evangelion. Everybody already knows it's a masterpiece or a pretentious ego-driven art house project, or both. So how about instead we talk about something a little more on the obscure side that spawned in the wake of that era-defining anime. Possible sequel to Eat Man, we're still waiting on confirmation for that. Koichi is not being very helpful. Released by Studio Sunrise in the year of our Lord 1999, Betterman is a 26-episode psychological mecha mystery anime that shares the same universe as the GGG series, a slightly less obscure mecha series that, honestly, I didn't watch, but I'm sure one of you has. If you're worried about continuity, don't be. There isn't much of a connection between the two shows besides a character from one hinting that he might be related to a character from the other. Betterman tells its own story, and it ends with a conclusion that mostly ties up the show, but if you want the true ending, then you'll have to check out the sequel novel that came out a decade later. Don't let that dissuade you from starting the anime though. I think there's more than enough here to leave a lasting impression. So with that all being said, let's talk about the story. Betterman takes place in a world plagued by fear and uncertainty. Coincidentally, the year is 2006. There's this deadly thing called Algernon that's causing people to go absolutely bonkers en masse. And I say thing because no one is really sure what Algernon actually is. A naturally occurring virus, some kind of terrorist bioweapon? No one really knows. All they do know is that anyone that gets down with the sickness dies in no uncertain terms. Keita, a genetic dead-end high schooler you'd expect to be voiced by Greg Ayres in the English dub,
Hey, Leo.
stumbles into an abandoned theme park that turns out to be not so abandoned. A pratfalls his way into a mecha piloted by his childhood friend Hinoki, who just so happened to transfer to his high school that very same day. This is where Keita discovers he's something called a dual kind, which is a special category that includes people with powers of hypnotism, telepathy, and high-functioning autism. He teams up with Hinoki for survival, but the creepy monsters of the deep dark prove too difficult. Luckily for them, a mysterious possible homosexual comes to their rescue in the nick of time. Keita joins up with Hinoki and the organization she works for to fight more creepy monsters, uncover the truth about Algernon, and
save the world!
Actually, I think he just wanted to hook up with the chick. Betterman is not a show that reinvents the wheel. It can be pretty formulaic when it comes to episode structure and bland when it comes to characters. Yeah, really selling the dream, aren't I? Why bother with this anime? Well, the biggest thing it has going for it is the atmosphere. It's dark. Really dark. Probably too dark. I can't watch this show during the day. My blinds don't do anything. The best way to keep a creepy vibe is to keep things a mystery, since people naturally fear the unknown. So having most of the backgrounds be shrouded in darkness does wonders for the horror moments. Couple that with some genuinely unsettling animation, and you got yourself a bona fide spooky show. The OST, though nothing special, serves the scenes well enough too. And of course, it doesn't hurt that the men, monsters, and machines that the group fight each episode mostly have some unique, often hair-raising designs. The only problem is the protagonist. The show is trying to be a psychological horror anime, but every scene with the main character ruins the tone and the tension. He feels completely out of place in a show like this. Just picture the most generic, dopey, mid-2000s harem MC you can think of, and that's basically this guy. Obnoxious, annoying, stupid, perverted, and special in more ways than one, none of them particularly good. The only compliments I can give him is that he sometimes exhibits a bit of bravery, and he's able to pull a cutie far out of his reach. I mean, I'd call him a short king, but I do not like him, so I will not. You can actually enjoy the atmosphere when the show decides to focus on the other characters. They're nothing special, but they play their assigned roles well enough. I do find it a little bit odd that they decided to make Hinoki a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck, but hey, that was the era. The show also does that thing where it uses a bunch of mythological names and terms for projects and people, and it's really up to you to decide if it actually means anything, or if the people making the show just thought it sounded cool. Algernon refers to the story Flowers for Algernon, a tale about a low IQ man who gets an operation that makes him a genius, but the effects were only temporary, and he eventually, painfully reverts back to his original state, and presumably dies shortly thereafter, just like the test rat Algernon that underwent the same operation. His final request is that his friends put some flowers on Algernon's grave. In Betterman, the victims of Algernon start to experience a mental degradation that drives them to pure insanity and ultimately kills them. Afterwards, a special flower blooms from their brain. It's a pretty creepy but also a pretty cool way to use that story as the basis for creating something new and different. Speaking of different, there's also the Shalom spellcaster that shows up in the second half to enact revenge on the Goyim for attempting to end the Fed. Now, some of you might say I'm misrepresenting the show, but let me assure you, I've done my research. Now, I've seen some people call this show cheap and generic looking, but I'm gonna have to disagree with that somewhat. Now, I couldn't find anything definitive about the budget, but I'm willing to bet it wasn't very big. The opening is really just stock footage of the ocean with characters awkwardly floating around the screen, and the show frequently lingers on establishing shots or close-ups to avoid animating movement. And there's the occasional splash of live action thrown in just because, well, it's cheaper to edit photos of real-life locations than it is to draw up new ones. And to be honest with you, I think this low budget actually makes the show better. And we're not talking Oshi levels of quality here, but I'm gonna say these cost-saving measures did a decent job fostering that tone and vibe of the show. When it wants to look creepy, they find a way to make it look creepy. But there is one thing I don't understand. The outfits that the pilots all have to wear. Now, I get the need for a skin-tight plug suit, but like, why make it look like this? Okay, I mean, I know a reason why. Let me clarify the question a bit. Why make it look like this for both sexes? Now, at the start of the video, I mentioned Betterman came out right after Evangelion. Many people have pointed out the similarities between this show and that one. The pilots, the organization, most of the main cast, they all share a lot in common. Then there's the fact that both of the antagonists of each show are focused on initiating the next stage of human evolution. There's probably a lot of other stuff too, but I still hesitate to call Betterman an Eva clone. Most of the similarities can be chalked up to genre conventions, and the differences in tone, and especially between the two main characters, cannot be overstated. Now, I'm not denying that Eva influenced Betterman. That much is obvious. But it very much feels like it's doing its own thing that just happens to overlap with some of the ideas from Anno's magnum opus. Also, to be clear, I don't think Betterman is better than Eva. It's not even close. But I do think Betterman makes for an interesting watch, especially if you're someone who can enjoy a slower-paced action show that exemplifies the strange beauty of the 90s anime. Specifically the late 90s anime that started to have some digital animation thrown in there. It makes for an interesting look, and it's for that reason I'm kinda glad this one has stayed in the 90s. Well, that's my recommendation this go-around, so until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Vult, and oops, forgot about Pearl Jam.